also known as Contra Costa Fitness. We like to talk about all sorts of things that pertain to your health, mindset, and even about the things we don't like about gyms in the fitness industry. We hope that when you listen into our conversations, you feel inspired, maybe even a little motivated to make some healthy changes in your life. And that way they'll stick around with you for the long run.
The long run.
Always.
Forever.
But stick around to the end, because that's where we tell you the action items that will actually make that happen.
Absolutely. That's right. I am Coach Brandon, and that's what we want for you. We want you to feel inspired and motivated.
Yes.
If you're with us live on Facebook, that's awesome. Or give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're here. Ask questions.
Yes.
If you're not following us in one of those places, thanks for listening.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. But yeah, please do come along, check us out, and be part of the conversation. It's awesome.
Yes, it is
Yes.
awesome.
All right. So we're talking today about variety in exercise.
Yes.
And why that matters, or if it matters.
Why it's
right?
important.
It kind of,
Mhm.
yeah, why it's important. I've had clients ask me, why I change things up so often in our programming.
I've heard
it. And the truth is that I think that variety is really important for a number of reasons.
Totally.
That I'll go over. But I'll also say that depending on what you want from your body, and your training, consistency is important.
There you go.
As well, right? Like kind
Mhm.
of balance in all things. Right? Sound familiar?
Huh. Have you said this before?
And what I really do mean actually is that, depending on what it is you're going for, right? Particularly in the area of like body composition, like bodybuilding, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of it can be quite boring.
Yes.
But it's important.
But important.
That it's boring.
Boring,
right?
but important.
So there are some specific applications for for lack of a better word, a lack of variety.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do want to give sort of proper recognition to that.
Okay.
But as far as what we do,
mm-hmm.
we're looking at things a little bit differently,
We
right?
sure
And we do
are.
things differently here.
That's why we're the anti-gym.
That's why we're the anti-gym. That's how that happened.
That is how that happened.
How we became what we are. So when I was growing up, I took weight training class in 7th and 8th grade, and which was like life changing for me. Like it taught me a lot. It was really good foundation for fitness and how to lift, how to behave in a gym, etc. But it really just gave me sort of a set of basic lifts to do. And that was great. Right.
Yeah.
But I was doing the same lifts for years. And eventually at some point I saw a YouTube video. God, I don't even know if it was a YouTube video. Actually, it may have just been
was there even YouTube back then?
Yeah.
Sorry.
My phone was powered by Steam. Yeah. It was on TV. And it was an interview with some actors from some action movie, right? And they were like, "How did you get so in shape?
What did your training look like getting ready for this movie?"
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And the training looked really different from what I knew, and they were doing all kinds of stuff that I'd never really seen before. And they interviewed the trainer. And he had this whole thing about variety. And, now I know a little bit more and I've studied a lot more. But at the time I was like, what? No way. So it really got me thinking about how I train. Why am I training?
Yeah.
Is it specifically just for looks? Is it for athletic performance? Is it, daily recreation, or function, actual health? There's a novel concept.
Holy cow.
Right? Or long-term health. So I started thinking more about how we move
Good.
and how we train, why we train. And of course I wanted to look good, but especially at that time, right? I'm a
7th and 8th grade. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a little bit later than that, but still, very much in those years.
Even worse.
I really wanted to, when I thought about it then,
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to function in any environment. I wanted to be able to like handle any environment and
Sure.
anything that life could throw at me as a human on this planet. Now, you know, that can get totally crazy, but within reason, right?
Okay.
I just wanted to be really athletic, and yes, I wanted to look like I could do those things at those times. We all want
Mm-hmm.
to look good. That's fine.
Yeah.
But my focus really shifted to function and how we're intended to move. And this is when I started
Nice.
really like wanting to like study this and pay attention to these things. So, yeah. And I did all kinds of weird stuff. Like I created my own like suspension trainer, right? Like, and out of like car tie downs and like chains. Like I
Okay.
started getting, yeah. And, but the main thing is, like I really started thinking about what is truly important to get from our bodies. Like what's
Yeah.
kind of some universal truths about all of us. Like we all might want different things and train for different reasons, but there's some underlying things that apply to all of us.
Yeah. And I had a very different experience growing up, but I get that and I can relate to that too, right? When I first started working with you, for example, my primary and conscious goal was to look good. I didn't
Yeah.
like the way I looked. I wanted to look good. I'm also female, and that tends to be something that's, a little bit more prevalent with women. We really want to look good. And I was thinking, I want to drop some weight. I want to look good. And the way to do that is dropping weight. And I even had a point, do you remember, where I was super hyper focused, where I was going to get rock hard
Oh
abs?
yeah, you were really all
I
about the
was
abs.
into it. I was like,
Yeah.
it's going to happen. But not too long after that, I realized that there's actually way more to it than that. And way more to it than looking good.
Mm-hmm.
My body does a lot for me, and I really needed to take care of it. So, when you had that thought process and you realized that, is that kind of what led you in the direction of a physical therapy career?
Yeah, well, yeah, it just started to really fascinate me, right? Like, and it still interests me, like, what kind of things, like, on the
Mm-hmm.
more, and I should, and again, it's okay to want to look good and for that to be
Yeah.
your motivation. Um, but yeah, when I started thinking more about like what the body is capable of doing and really what's going to be more important as I age. And even at that time, like I was still a young athlete, right? I was still playing sports
Mm-hmm.
and really into being outdoors. And I wanted to be able to do things like climb and, run and hike and, kayak. And yeah, I was playing football still in high school. So I, wanted to be as resilient and agile and athletic as possible as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I really did kind of spark my interest in how we move, why we move, and what's important for our bodies as we
Yeah.
age.
And we actually
or
we have these
different phases.
conversations quite a bit with the members here at our gym. And we always tell people, you're all different. You have different bodies, different lives, different
Hmm.
abilities, needs, skills, blah, blah, blah. I could go on for forever. So I kind of have a feeling of what you're going to say here, but what is important
Yeah.
for us to get from our bodies?
Yeah. Well, like you said, like it is super subjective, right? Like it depends
Yep.
on the person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love what I do.
Yeah.
Because like I love training specific to the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? And their life.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really the answer. Like it's subjective and it
Totally.
changes. It's different for you than it is from me in some ways.
Absolutely.
But there's always the underlying fact that like whether you're training for looks, which again is totally fine.
Totally
I do
okay.
some lifts that are like really not totally functional.
Me
It's
too.
okay. They're all about like I want huge arms.
Yeah, there's definitely that, and that's okay. It's okay to
Yeah.
have that and want that.
Right.
There's
Totally.
nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, whether you're training for that or for athletics or to be able to kayak or ski or do underwater interpretive dancing or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like our health will make itself a priority if we don't prioritize it proactively at
Right.
some point, right?
Yeah.
That's going to happen at the end of all of that. we all are going to need to be able to do some basic stuff that allows us to live a long life, and have a high quality of life, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, all of us
totally.
are going to need to prioritize being able to get up and down from the floor,
Yep.
being able to lift
Yep.
things overhead, being
Balance.
able to pull our bodies, toward a stable object or
For
whatever,
sure.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that to answer your question, it is different for everyone, but when it comes down to it, as we funnel or as we age, that funnels down toward those really kind of primary functional movements
Yeah.
to me.
I could see how that would get you interested in physical therapy as a career. And, like I said earlier, once I really got into the swing of things, several times my mind shifted and the focus changed, right?
Right.
From not just how I looked, but to how I felt. And I think a lot of times
Yeah.
people often think when I say that too, focus on how you feel, we still kind of gear towards how, like, do I feel better in these clothes? Do
Mm.
I feel less bloated?
Yeah.
Do I,
Well, yeah.
you know, but a couple years ago, I had a really big aha moment and with how I felt and focusing on my feelings.
Yeah.
And before I share that moment, it's important to know that I was in a train accident in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people are going to be like, what a train accident? Like, where do you live? But I really messed up my back pretty good. I had some
Mm.
really serious issues. And even though I was in my 20s, the smallest thing would inflame my injury and it limited the physical activities I could do. And then I started gaining weight. So interesting. But I got headaches. I got leg
Mm.
pain. Like, what the heck? The list goes on. Like, all these things were hurting and bothering me. And I joked around that I
Yeah.
had the back of an 80-year-old woman in my 20s.
Yeah. You used to say that when we
Yeah.
first started working together.
Right. So fast forward, you and I actually went to a concert a couple years ago
Mm.
with some other people. And normally I'd last for like maybe 45 minutes and be like, damn, I need to sit.
Yeah,
Like, this is killing me. I'm in pain and a shit ton of pain. Not just like, oh, I'm a little sore, I want to sit, but like
a lot of pain.
excruciating pain everywhere. And more than 2 hours had gone by. And I stopped and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm wearing boots. These boots have a heel. So not only am I now standing for 2 hours, but I was excited that, and surprised, by the way, that I was in no pain.
Yeah.
Zero. No pain at all. And I couldn't figure it out for a hot second. So why do you think that was,
Why
Brandon?
is that? Well, yeah.
Why
you
did I have no
started-
pain?
I mean, for one, you did a lot of like core work and working on your back, and by the way, that is exactly what we're talking about when we say that, your health will make itself a priority one way or another. Sometimes it's gradually if we're lucky, or sometimes it's suddenly with a sudden injury or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you did a lot of work sort of specific to what you, and it was unintentional though, which is kind of the funny part, right?
Totally. I wasn't trying.
Yeah, because I train the way that I do, or I coach the way that I do, like those bases ended up getting covered,
right?
Because we were practicing such a variety of movements.
Right. There was no intention of let's do this to strengthen your back specifically.
Right.
It was having variety in my workouts, and it was really focusing on functional movement.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So our bodies are designed and intended to move in a lot of different ways, right? Like meaning like specifically, like meaning our joints can move in many combinations, right? And perform in a lot of different ways. Meaning also that we can like perform those joint movements, those same movements also in different ways. Like, so you have combinations of movements, but then how you perform those movements, that's what I'm trying to say. So
it's hard to explain,
right? Like, yeah. So, meaning how we perform those movements, meaning we can do them powerfully, right? Or we can do them in repetition for long periods of time and everything in between. That was a really convoluted roundabout sentence there, but I hope that makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
All right. So variety in our exercise programming is required in order to cover those bases, right? So from improving our ability to perform different movement patterns in our daily lives, or what am I trying to say? The different patterns that allow us to function in our daily lives, or to perform specific things. So the movement patterns, and then the type of movement.
Totally.
Right. So
it's a hard thing to explain,
but also to keep our different systems of our body healthy, right?
Yeah. Totally.
This is like, so right, so like your muscular, skeletal, nervous, cardiovascular, endocrine, integumentary, your
That
skin,
is a
right?
mouthful.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot
Right?
of stuff.
Different kinds of movement provide different benefits to different systems and keep them healthy.
Well said.
Yeah, it's not really, but thanks. Yeah, we
But
finally got around
we
to
got to it. But totally, yeah. I have also noticed in the last couple of years the amount of pain that I feel in my joints. I'm a former ballet dancer, so my hips in particular, I felt a big improvement there because I have quite a bit of variety in my workouts now,
right.
that I focus on not just building muscle and endurance, but also addressing, you mentioned the joints, like how my joints move so that I can actually function, like how my body moves, right?
Right.
And that's really the feelings. Like I stopped feeling, how do I feel in these clothes? How do I feel after I eat? But those feelings, I started focusing on how easy is it for me to get through my day
Sure.
without pain, to be able to do things and age with grace, for lack of a better description. And I want to be in great shape in my 80s, not dealing with aches and pains all over the place, like joking around like, oh, I have a back of an 80-year-old woman. I want to
Right.
be a really strong 80-year-old woman who doesn't walk around in pain.
Totally. Yeah, and that brings us to an important point, like about like injury prevention.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of the time our bodies experience pain or experience an injury, become damaged, because we overwhelm them. We ask them to
Right.
do a task that they're not prepared to do.
Right.
Right. And so when we are being trained in to meet a variety of fine and gross motor challenges, it makes us less likely to have those those times when we're overwhelming the body, but also to just like have less accidents.
Yeah.
Right? Like
totally.
You're more coordinated, you're less likely to, eat it or perform perform with poor form,
Right.
because we don't really think of form in our daily tasks, right? We think of them when we're actually performing exercises. We don't even think about it when we put dumbbells back on the rack, right? Half the time,
right.
where so many injuries happen.
Yep.
Because people are like practicing all the form, and then
Yep.
when they're not being mindful. And so, yeah, if you don't train for that kind of stuff, you don't incorporate those kinds of movements, then yeah, your body will not be prepared to do that. Now, the other thing is overuse injuries as well. They're becoming more and more common, and those are less likely to occur when we perform a wide variety of movement patterns.
Totally.
I can
100%.
tell you a really long story about that and like professional athletes and Olympic athletes, but that would
maybe we'll save that for another time.
Another episode.
But also, when I mentioned about building strength in my back, it not only makes functioning easier, but I also am less cautious about my back. Like I don't protect my back the same way I used to, which you would think like, oh, I'm being very careful. I'm protecting my back. That's going to prevent injury because, I don't want to use it the wrong way, but it creates further injury. And okay, so I really like analogies. Can I use one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So I like to cook, and I have different tools for different purposes. One tool in particular I use for making sauces is a rubber whisk. And if I'm using my old metal whisk that I use for baking to make a sauce in my nonstick pan, I run the risk of damaging it. So doing something that is seemingly normal, but because I cook often and make a variety of things, I know this is going to happen, so I make sure I'm using the right tool in the right application to get her done.
Yeah.
So also by having variety in my workouts, I know my body better. So when I may be pushing myself a little bit, I can feel it before I cause further injury. I'm like, oh, that's pushing it in the wrong direction. That's not the right kind of pain. And then I can back off and not injure it.
Yeah. We can recognize when something is potentially dangerous for us.
Hopefully that was an appropriate analogy. It made sense to me.
Yeah, knowing how to use your tools.
Yeah.
So that's a whole, I mean, we can talk for a really long time about that.
Totally could.
As well. But yeah, when also so muscle guarding, right, after an injury or, to protect a specific area of the body, causes its own pain, right? And this is where we get into the pain cycle, and then we have limited movement, and then that, which causes more pain and makes us want to move less, and so that keeps us in pain. And so when we can, breaking out of that is one thing, and that's a whole other conversation, but preventing that is the best strategy if possible, right?
Yes.
And we can do that when we do when we perform a wide variety of movements, then we can move more confidently.
Yeah.
And we don't have to guard as much, and really, like, we can move without fear. All right. So that is, that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah.
But yeah, listening to our body. Yeah. That's another thing. Taking breaks and rests where we need to. So different types of intervals in our training, that's important. Understanding the difference between soreness and working through that versus pain, and when you need to, back off when something is actually wrong.
Right.
Those are when we are practicing a lot of variety in our movements, then we know our bodies better.
Totally. And all right, so I know that we're getting close to the end of things, but what else is beneficial to having variety in our workouts? I know there are a few people I can think of who do the exact same thing every day or X days a week, right? I do this 3 times a week, every week, because it works for me. And I also hear some of those very same people who, by the way, are usually doing whatever activity they're doing in an attempt to lose weight, if I'm being perfectly honest. They get frustrated because they're like, well, this worked for X period of time, but now I've plateaued. Why is that? I mean, if it burned off all this stuff before, why isn't it working now?
Right. And
why do I need variety to help with that?
And not to call anybody out, right? But that is, that's something we hear a lot, and it's frustrating, right? That sucks to be there. You're like, wait a minute, this worked
for 4 months, and now all of a sudden it's doing nothing.
Yeah. And there is, I think there is a lot to that. You can't argue with that logic. If it works, it works.
Yeah.
But yes, a lot of the time, it stops working.
It stops.
Because our bodies are so adaptable. And their goal is to always conserve energy and to be efficient.
Yes.
Which sounds good, but when you're trying to burn calories, you don't want to be efficient.
No.
You want to burn 12 calories looking at your,
burn it.
Right. You don't want to be energy efficient. You want to spend as much energy as possible in the shortest amount of time, right?
Yep.
But we, as exercisers, we don't want to conserve that energy. So changing up how we move and keeping our bodies guessing requires more energy.
Yeah.
Right. Just the coordination end of it, and doing new movements. Forces us to spend more energy on those movements.
Yeah.
That's why practice makes us better at things. Right?
Totally.
So if we practice a lot of variety and we're always changing things up, then your body doesn't get a chance to become really well adapted and efficient at that specific set of movements.
That definitely makes sense.
Right.
And with that, it actually brings us to our very favorite, my favorite part of the podcast. I won't say it, but you know what time it is, don't you?
I know what time it is.
Yes. So, if variety in our workouts is important and you're not lucky enough to live in, say, Concord, California, elbow, elbow, wink, wink, what should our listeners be doing to take action and make sure they're getting variety in their workouts that they need to accomplish all of this?
Action time. Yeah. What can you do? It's important to make sure you have a mix of activity in your workouts. And I know that can get like super like hairy, right? Like that can get complicated, and programming actually is harder than, well, can be very difficult. And, it doesn't have to be. No. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that, if you change things up, if you are doing cardio on a daily or a regular basic basis during the week, then throw in some weights into your routines. Yeah.
Doesn't even have to be heavy, just some light weights, doing something different.
Totally. Yeah. And vice versa. If you're a lifter and you've been doing the same lifts forever, let's try some new stuff. I like to rotate things out. Like sometimes I'll practice variety like day to day. I'm like not going to do the same, the same workout or the same movements at all, through a week. I'm going to practice all different stuff. And then other times I'll practice that stuff for, say, 3 weeks or maybe even 6 weeks. I'll practice like the same lifts and then I move on. So, play around is what I'm saying. Like have fun with it and do something that's different. Do some research, and get some, and it's also always good to get some eyes on you, like have a trainer help you out.
Yep.
But have fun with it and like do different things.
Yeah. That's why our circuit classes are so important, because we're doing a variety of things within the same workout. You're lifting some weights, you're doing resistance, you're doing cardio. So variety in everything that you do.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
You should take us out.
We're out of here. I'm going to take us out.
Take us out.
All right. We love you.
We do.
We care about our community. So if you reach out, we will answer. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely.
Seriously. People send us messages on Facebook and Instagram all the time. And we're happy to talk. If you're local, come by and visit us, man. We have fun.
You can also go to our website and shoot us a chat there and ask us a question. Easy as that.
Yeah. What's our website?
It's www.contracostafitness.com.
contracostafitness.com. Come check us out and come back next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. We love you.
Bye.
Keep lifting each other up.
Yes.
And raise your hand if you need to be lifted up.